Good morning, everyone, or good day or whatever time rather you're watching this video. So for today, we'll continue our discussion on imagery, diction, and figurative language. And prior to this, of course, during our face-to-face discussion last week, we are already able to understand and to talk about the things that you have to do and you are expected to do at the end of this lesson, which is first to understand imagery, diction, figurative language, or figurative speech rather, and variation of language. And of course, at the end of this, you are to produce short paragraphs or vignettes using imagery, diction, figures of speech, and their specific experiences. Alright, so I believe, already made it clear that at the end of this discussion, since this is a creative writing class, you are to write something, right? You are to write a vignette, which I am going to discuss further as we go along in this discussion. So we have already talked about things like what will happen or what will happen if you lose your senses. Some of you will say, or some of you have said that we're not going to be able to see anything, feel anything, we're going to be numb. And what we're saying, if we lose all of this, that means you're already dead, right? And uh, our senses are some of the basic needs that we have to activate even in creative writing, because I believe when we had our orientation in this class, I have already mentioned that your imagination would be the limit. I mean, we have to think out of the box, go out of what just is ordinary, and really have to squeeze out your creative juices as writers, right? So we have already mentioned that imagery could either be or could be defined as a writer or a speaker's use of words, figures of speech to create a vivid picture of physical sensation, like what we have mentioned before during a discussion. This is just a quick review before we continue discussing the rest, since we weren't able to have our face-to-face class today. So it's better that we have the recording right now, so you have something to look back into as well. All right. So I believe I have already made it clear last week that one of your goals is to be able to paint pictures in the mind of your readers. As what we have mentioned, it's about imagery is about painting mental pictures in the mind of our readers that will allow them to experience what is happening inside the story, like to see what the characters see, to feel what they feel, to hear what they hear, to smell what they smell, and to taste what they eat. So it should appeal to one, more, or all of the senses. And as we have joked around, even with the sixth sense, which is your sense of humor, as you have said, right? So it's some sort of playing with words to be able for us to, just like what we have mentioned here, to be able to paint mental pictures in the mind of our readers, right? Okay, so let's just drive along, as we have already discussed this. So let us not repeat, and you already have your lecture of this lesson. So discuss the types of imagery, like we have auditory, visual, tactile, gustatory, and olfactory. And one of this just appeals to our senses, like auditory appeals to our sense of hearing, visual appeals to our sense of sight. Tactile appeals to our sense of touch. Olfactory to our sense of smell. Gustatory to our sense of taste. And in our e-learning or e-learning management system, or our learning management system, I have added an additional reading that have mentioned about kinesthetic and the other type of imagery that we had. Okay, it's kinesthetic and organic imagery, wherein the kinesthetic, some sort of also like a tactile imagery, but it's more of envisioning the movement, the action of a character, or simply the things that could either be further divided into sense of touch, temperature, movement, or feeling, like so. Hey, we are talking about feelings that are kinesthetics. I mean, we are talking about the feelings, or the feelings that somehow is abstract, like love. Okay, so a feeling that we do not concretely feel, like the breeze of the air or the hotness of the sun. Kinesthetics are like that, like love, temperature, but something that is abstract. And also the that organic that uh the readers feel, or the character feel, like thirst, things like that. So although the basics are this five: auditory, visual, tactile, olfactory, and gustatory. So again, we don't have to complicate things out. Visual imagery, wherein we could make use of color, shapes, size, patterns, so that our readers will be able to really visualize a vivid picture of the thing that is happening, or the thing that is being described in the story. Auditory is some sort of what we hear and what we don't hear, something to do with silence, noise, sounds, anything. Okay, anything that appeals to our sense of olfactory, all the things that we smell, and the words that we use to invoke a smell in the mind of our readers as writers. Another thing is gustatory imagery that includes sweetness, sourness, saltiness, spiciness, savoriness, something that has to do with taste. Alright. Of course, a tactile, or the tactile one, has something to do with temperature, texture, touch, movement. So a tactile also covers the two additional imagery types that we have mentioned: organic and kinesthetics. Alright? So we already studied that imagery is important. We have established this before we, at least before we separated after the discussion. We have made it clear that imagery is essential in creative writing because it allows us to let our readers sympathize with the characters and narrators, and to somehow bring the readers to the situation, okay? To the scene itself, to allow them to see what the characters see, to smell the fragrance of the surroundings, or whatever the smell the surrounding has, to feel, to hear anything. Okay, that will allow our readers, the word is, to experience what the characters in the story that we are writing experiences. All right, and that's for imagery. The next one, we have what we call diction. Now, from the term itself, we don't have to complicate things out here. The second most basic element of creative writing, whatever writing it is diction. Okay, diction isn't just about what we commonly hear, like pronunciation, words that somebody use in speaking. Well, in writing, we call that diction, the choice of words. Okay, as writers in creative writing, we have the freedom to choose any word that we could use. As uh as I have advised you, we have to play with words, right? We have to play with words. So diction refers to your choice of words as a writer, the linguistic choices as written there in our visual, made by a writer to convey an idea or point of view or tell a story in an effective way, and it's directly connected to characterization. Why? Because the way you speak describes a personality. Right? Like, for example, your character is a prom girl, like a girl from the province. Isn't it the word choices that she will have is different from the word choices that a city girl uses? For example, you could make use of terms that is somehow colloquial or local terms that only uh, women from provinces can understand, or some sort of a tone that only them understand. So it is diction is directly connected to characterization because your word choices will describe or will somehow affect the description characteristics of the characters in your story. Alright? And when we are after diction, you have to remember these factors. Okay? When you are choosing words to use in your story, in the dialogue of your character, you have to consider three things. First, it must be right and accurate. Second, it must be appropriate for the context. And third, it must be understood by the readers or listeners. Okay, first and foremost, it must be right and accurate so that you would not lose your credibility as a writer, and your characters rather, would also have a credibility. Okay? Like, for example, if your character is a doctor, do not give them dialogues that do not sound like doctors. Hey? You see that? It must be appropriate for the context as well, and it must be understood by the readers or listeners. So you have to somehow consider your audiences as well. Like, for example, you're gonna write children's book. Are you gonna use terms that are not understood by children? Of course, if you're gonna write children's book, children's stories, your choice of words must be easy to understand, as your audience are children or young people. Alright, you don't have to be too formal or to use highfalutin words to do so. You have to be careful. Okay, you have to make it appropriate for the context. Okay? So you also have to consider your readers. As writers, your audience. Okay? Your supporters would be your readers. So if they won't understand your wordings, your dictions, your choice of words, they are not going to read your story. Get my point? I hope. I hope that you get my point. So if imagery do have its types, of course, in diction we also have different types of diction. Alright? So first up, we have the formal diction. Okay, formal from the term itself, well, it's not new to you. You have had EAPP last semester, so you already know what formal means. But in diction, it refers to elevated, sophisticated, professional language, meaning it contains complex syntax and does not contain colloquialism, contractions, and slang. So most of the time, if you're gonna use it as dialogues, it could be found in the dialogue of a lawyer, right? A judge, or somebody who is working in a formal setup. Okay? So it has complex syntax because it has to be elevated, not the way that it is commonly used in a daily conversation. Okay, if you get my point, like for example, as heretofore stated by the representative of the firm, any indication of microaggression among colleagues will not be tolerated. Okay, get that? We commonly hear this where? At the offices, legal matters, okay? By the choice of words, you can say that it has something to do with legal matters, okay? It has something to do with legal matters. Like, you're not gonna hear this line amongst your friends. They are not gonna tell you that, okay? Because this is something that is formal, okay? Something that is used in a legal context. And if you're gonna make a character that is an attorney, a lawyer, a judge, a senator, for example, a politician, maybe they should sound like this, and these are the words that you are to use to them. Okay? That's why we have mentioned a while ago that diction is directly connected to characterization. Okay? Of course, if we have formal diction, we have its counterpart, which is informal diction. So we don't have to complicate things out. It is something that is conversational, casual, realistic language. So it is often used by writers to portray real life communication, right? Dialogues between realistic characters, and it is often utilized in narrative literary forms such as short fictions and novels. Informal diction is the normal ones, alright? The one that is used by the normies, as you say, alright? The ones that we use on a daily basis. Like, for example, text me when you're ready to head home so I can pick you up. Okay, so here we could use contractions or simple terms, not elevated, not highfalutin, just simple terms. So it's the terms that we commonly use on a daily basis. Alright, and that's the second one, formal, informal. And we also have colloquial. So, colloquial is a type of informal diction, but here the words are informal, meaning expressions which are typically associated with a specific region or time period. It's region bound, it's time bound, because at some point it could die. Okay, colloquialism are useful in portraying realistic and colorful characters. Like, for example, the one that I have mentioned a while ago. If you're gonna write a story wherein, for example, your characters are from the province, diba? For example, in Tagalog or in Filipino, if you're gonna write a Filipino dialogue for a Batangueña, probably your choice of words would be dagasa instead of hulog, or patak instead of laglag, because that's the term that they are using. Okay, it's time bound because the terms would somehow die and live. Like, for example, erpat. The term erpat for father, uh, it was invented years ago, and then somehow it has lost its presence in the society until now na ginagamit na siya ng mga tao. Okay, do you see the point? And we commonly use it in portraying realistic and colorful characters. Like, have you all heard the new country music? So here, colloquial is you all. It's informal, and it's not commonly used in a daily basis, but it is used by those people who are happy-go-lucky, the hippie ones. Okay? Get the point? Right? Colloquial and formal impressions, or expressions rather, that is time-bound or region-bound. Like, for example, there are some terms, for example, ere. Okay? Ere nga, di ba? In Bulacan, some people, even though they speak Tagalog, they don't understand. Mag-urong ka nga ng pinagkainan, 'di ba? Iurong mo nga ang pinagkainan, for example. For a Bolakenya, we understood very clear that when somebody said, iurong mo nga ang pinagkainan, that means we wash the dishes. But for those people who are not from Bulacan and who are not aware of the terms that we are using in Bulacan, they might just think that urong means move backward, or push something, right? So probably if they hear yung unang mga ang pinggan, for example, they are just gonna move the plate on the table. Okay? Because that happens, right? And I believe once in our lives we have experienced that towards someone. Okay? So colloquial is time bound, region bound. And it could be used to portray characters who are from a certain group of or from a certain time period or a certain region in our country or in any country that you could think of. Next to colloquial, we have slang. Okay, so slang is a word or a word of phrases originated within a particular culture or subgroup that become widespread in use. For example, I look tired because I was binge watching a show on Netflix last night. So slang is originally a colloquial term. Okay, it's originally a colloquial term, but a colloquial is reason bound and time bound. It becomes a slang when there has been or when there are already a lot of people using it. Okay? Okay? Gets niyo yun? For example, the word selfie. Dati ginagamit lang siya ng ng mga original na gumagamit ito before, mga tao sa Manila lang or mga kabataan. Pero ngayon, it has become a slang. Why? Because even older generation use that, the word selfie. Okay? I hope you are seeing my point. Una, a slang is a term that originated from a subgroup, like colloquial. Hey, you get my point? It was once a colloquial term, but when the moment became that it is already used widespread, okay, by many people, not only in the region, okay, not only in a particular group of people, pero of almost everybody, okay, of almost everybody. For example, before, yung mga gay terms, we consider them as colloquial because only gay people use them. But at this point of time, we cannot consider them colloquial anymore. Why? Because it has become a widespread thing. Okay? Therefore, gay words, Becky terms, Becky words, are not anymore colloquial. They are now slang. Why? Because there are a lot of people who are already using them. However, some sort, if we are going to we if we're gonna take a look at it at an international level, it could be a colloquial in an international level. Why? Because only Filipino people use that. Some region bound. Okay, you get my point? Region bound. Internationally speaking, Becky words are colloquial. But in the Philippines, you could say it's a slang already because there are a lot of Filipinos using it. Get my point? Okay? Get that? Alright. Dialect is a variety of language spoken in a particular geographical area or by particular group of people. May be different from variety of that language through its vocabulary, syntax, and pronunciation. Pronunciation rather. So a dialect is a variation of a language. So let me ask you a question. Is Kapampangan a dialect or a language? If you're thinking it's a dialect, well, you have to think twice because it's a language. Why? Because there are some words in Filipino that has a complete different counterpart in Kapampangan. Okay, it's two different language. Tagalog is a language as well. Okay? Filipino is our national language based from Tagalog. Tagalog is a language, Kapampangan is a language. Now what's a dialect? Well, here's a dialect. Tagalog of Bulacan is a dialect because it's a Tagalog word or it's a Tagalog language, but it is some variety of Tagalog. And you get my point. Tagalog of Batangas is different. Tagalog of Bulacan is different. Okay? Like for instance, in the Tagalog of Bulacan, kapag tubig pumapatak, tama? Mapatak na naman ang ulan sa bubong ng bahay, for example. But in the Tagalog of Batangas, patak means different. In Batangas, no matter how big, no matter how small an object is, when it falls, pumatak. Okay, for example, hala, nagpatak. Hala, ang ah, ah, hala, ang gitara ay nagpatak. Nahulog ang gitara. Pero sa Tagalog ng Bulacan, it's different. Okay? Are you getting my point? Dialect is a variety of language spoken in a particular area. So, Kapampangan is a language, but a dialect is Kapampangan ng Pampanga, Kapampangan ng Nueva Ecija, or Kapampangan of other Kapampangan speaking places. Okay? Get my point? I hope so. Alright? Lastly, we have jargons. Well, jargons, I think you already know this. We have already mentioned this in EAPP before, at least as I am aware of it. So, jargon is a specific words or phrases used in a different contexts, professions, and trade, meaning it is professional terms depending on what profession you are talking about. For example, for FTP, failure to pay the fine is a police jargon. A BP, blood pressure, is a medical jargon. School form number 1 is teacher's jargon or school jargon. Administrators jargons. Is when we speak of school form number 9, for example, we understand that as teachers, we know what school form number 9 is. Pero kapag sinabi namin sa inyo yun, school form number 9, you'll be, what? Ano yun? Pero, sa totoo, school form number 9 is just a report card. Diba? Pag sinabi namin sa inyo report card, you understand it. Because it's a common thing. Pero pag sinabi namin sa inyong school form number 9, only teachers or people who are working in the academy understand. That's jargon. Okay? Formative assessment, that's also a jargon for us teachers. You're not gonna understand it. Pero pag sinabi namin sa inyo, it's just a quiz, practice, formative assessment, you'll understand. Okay? Quiz, practices, activities, those are formative assessment. Okay? So jargons are words, phrases that are used by different profession, context, or trade. Okay? Depends on professionals who are practicing it. Alright? Lastly, we're down to the last one, the figures of speech. Well, I believe you already know this, so this is some sort of review. Figures of speech is a rhetorical device that achieves a special effect by using words in indistinctive ways. So, figures of speech allows us to really play with words. And these words, when they are used as figures of speech, should not be interpreted and understood in a literal term or a literal manner. So, figures of speech allows writers to achieve special effects in writing. Alright, we have many figures of speech and we could run out of time discussing all of them. But what am I going to discuss today in this video are just the common things or the common figures of speech that is used by writers. First stopped, we have alliteration. So alliteration is a repetition of an initial consonant sound, like what's commonly used in tongue twisters. Oh, forgive me if I can't be able to pronounce it so right this time because I have just got my braces adjusted. So, yeah. For example, she sells seashells by the seashore. Wow. Congratulations to me. Alright, here we hear the repetition of the sound. S sells seashore. Right? Like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper. That's alliteration. Okay, the repetition of initial sounds. Here we have S, S. Okay, so initial consonant sound. Initial in the beginning. Okay, so there's a repetition of the word letter sound S. She sells seashells by the seashore. Or Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled pepper, for example. So that is alliteration. Get that? Alright. Next, we have anaphora. Anaphora is another repetition, but what made it different from alliteration is that here in anaphora, what is being repeated is a word or a phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or verses. So in alliteration, what we are just repeating is the initial consonant sound. Initial consonant sound. But in anaphora, what we are repeating here is word or phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or verses. Like for example, unfortunately, I was in the wrong place at the wrong time at the wrong day. Okay, we have here wrong. The word wrong is being repeated, or the phrase the wrong, right? The wrong. I was in the wrong place, the wrong time, wrong day. Get that? So it's a repetition of same word, phrase at the beginning of successive clauses or verses. Sunod, sunod. Okay? Anaphora. Alliteration, we are repeating consonant sounds. Alright? Next up, we have apostrophe. Now, this apostrophe isn't the apostrophe that we know, like the quotation mark, or I mean the punctuation mark rather. Apostrophe here in a figurative language or in figure of speech means directly addressing a non-existing person or an inanimate object as though it was a living thing. So apostrophe is like talking to something that has no life. It could be an object, okay, or even an animal, or talking to something or someone who or which does not have the ability to reply or to answer back. Like, for example, oh, you stupid car, you never work when I need you to. Bird side. So, meaning you're talking to someone or something that does not have the ability to reply back. Like in the case of this example, Bert told the car, "You're stupid, you stupid car," as if the car was living and as if the car has the ability to reply. Okay, you getting my point? It's also apostrophe also happens when you are talking to someone who is already dead because they have no ability to reply back. Okay? Get my point? Alright? Thank you. I hope that you are still with me during this time and you are getting what I want you to get right now. Alright? Next, we have euphemism. Well, euphemism is sugarcoating. Okay? It's the substitution of an inoffensive term for one considered offensively explicit. Meaning, there are some words. As writers, I believe we have mentioned and learned in the APP that we have to be cautious. Right? We have to observe caution so that we will not be able to offend and hurt the feelings of our readers. So we we also have that in creative writing, in euphemism, in figures of speech. All right, it's substituting a more acceptable term to some sort of an unacceptable term. Like, for example, we're teaching our toddler how to go potty, Bobby said. So, potty training is a sugarcoat for poop. or to poop. Because of course, as humans, we find it, di ba? We find it some sort of odd and disgusting to hear poop or the term poop, or at some point you could say instead of die, di ba? Die is some sort of offensive or hurting to the feeling. So instead of saying blah blah died because of this and because of that, diba, we sometimes try to sugarcoat it like blah blah passed away instead of die, passed away, or rest in the presence of our Father. So it's some sort of sugarcoating, making heavy terms sound light or lighter. Okay, get my point? It's sugarcoating, substituting. Okay, it's the substitution of an inoffensive term for one that is considered offensively explicit. Alright? Last or next one, we have hyperbole. Well, hyperbole is one of the common figures of speech. So it's exaggerating. Okay, like for example, I have a ton of things to do when I get home. Instead of just saying many, a lot, 20, diba? We say a ton. Or could also say, I could eat a horse. That's hyperbole. Eat a horse. Though it's an idiomatic expression as well. But you cannot eat a horse, no matter how hungry you are. Right? It's just exaggerating terms. Exaggerating statement, extravagant statement that is so hyper, okay, from the term itself, hyper, super, alright? Like, I have a ton of things to do when I got home. Again, no matter how many things you have to do, it's impossible that you have a ton of things to do just right after going home, alright? Irony, on the other hand, would be our next. Is a statement or situation wherein the meaning is contradicted by the appearance or presentation of the idea. The meaning is somehow an opposite of the idea that is being presented. Like, for example, a fire station burns down is an irony. Why? Because a fire station has firefighters and fire trucks. Yeah, this one is the most common. I mean, I don't know if you have already knew this, or you have heard the balitang balita sa radyong sira. It's an Filipino irony. Okay? Balitang balita sa radyong sira. How could you heard or how could you hear something from a radio that is broken? But it's an irony. Balitang balita sa radyong sira, for example, tindera ng tubig namatay sa uhaw. That's a Filipino irony. Okay? Yung sinasabi niya na buntis sinaksak, yung baby nakailag. That's an irony. Okay? Another thing, a marriage counselor files for a divorce. See? A marriage counselor's job is for at least to help couples to fix their marriage. But in this sentence, the marriage counselor himself or herself files a divorce. So it's ironic because your job is to try to help a couple fix their own marriage. Yet you are not going to fix yourself or your own marriage rather and file a divorce. Okay, get my point? Irony, okay? A statement is contradicted by the idea's appearance or the presentation of the idea in the statement itself. A fire station burns down, or water vendor dies of thirst. Okay, get that? I hope you get that. And I hope that we are discussing this face to face because it's better. I could imagine your laughs, and no, I could even imagine so many interests that you have in this part. Okay, next we have is metaphor. Metaphor is an amplified comparison between two dissimilar things. or a direct comparison of two different things. Like he has a heart of gold. So here we have we have compared heart to a gold directly, right? Like lion is the king of the jungle. Lion and the king. Okay? Metaphor. We don't have to complicate things out. I know you already know this. So it's a direct comparison. Metonymy, on the other hand, is a figurative language that is a figure of speech in a word or phrase that is substituted for another with its closely associated. The rhetorical strategy of describing something indirectly by referring to things around it. So metonymy is describing an idea, not directly, but just using terms, using words that could be associated to it. For example, the pen is mightier than sword. Okay, so it could mean wisdom is better than uh, sword. Wisdom is better than aggressiveness. For example, to be wise is better than to be aggressive. As pen could be associated to wisdom, learning, school, and sword could be associated to fight. Okay? Or let me give you a hand. Instead of saying let me help you, hand is used to describe help. Because when we help, we use our hands most of the time. Okay? So it's like euphemism, but in euphemism, what we are substituting are offensive terms with inoffensive terms. So metonymy, we are substituting an idea or a word with a term that is associated to it, okay, or that we could relate to it. Uh, for example, yeah, let me give you a hand as one example. Instead of saying help, we say hand, part of the body that could be associated to help. Okay? Okay? If you have clarifications and questions, you could message me in our group chat, or you could surf the Google by yourself, of course. Everything is already available. You just have to be careful in choosing your references. Okay? Yeah, sounds. Okay? Whenever there is some sort of sound that's already onomatopoeia. The use of words that imitate sounds associated with the object actions that they refer to. For example, clap of thunder went bang and scared my poor dog. So the clap of the thunder bang sound and scared the poor dog, like the tick-tock of the clock. It's an onomatopoeia. Okay? Or the ding-dong in the doorbell. What else? The ring of the phone. That has something to do with sounds. Okay, it's onomatopoeia. The bark of the dog, the chirp of the bird, it's onomatopoeia. Alright? Okay? It has something to do with sounds, imitating the sounds that is associated with object, animals, or things or actions that they do. Clap of the hands, onomatopoeia, it sounds. Okay? Next is oxymoron. Oxymoron is a combination of two contradictory words, meaning combination of two words that are complete opposite. For example, do you have the original copies of what we requested? So the oxymoron here is original copies. Contradictory, incompatible words, but working just right because we get this original copies. Okay? Genuine imitation of Rolex. Genuine imitation. Pretty ugly. Okay? We get what this means, but the words that are used are are two contradicting opposite terms. Pretty ugly. Student teacher. Oxymoron. Okay? Get that? Okay, I hope you get that. And next we have personification. Well, again, it's also common, like metaphor. It's a figure of speech in which an inanimate object or abstraction endowed with human qualities or abilities, meaning something that is not human is given the ability of a human, like like the characters in fables, animals who are not really talking or cannot talk in real life, but in fables they can. So it's personification. Or, for example, that kitchen knife will take a bite out of your hand if you don't handle it safely. A kitchen knife, a kitchen knife is an inanimate object, but in this sentence, it has given a human quality. Take a bite. Okay, kakagatin ka niyan kapag ka hindi mo, di ba? Tutuklawin ka na, something like that. So, it has given a characteristic that is not commonly present in an object. Like the trees are dancing. The trees cannot dance, but we are giving them the ability to dance. It's personification. The sun is smiling at me today. The sun cannot smile, but it's some sort of personification that, or it means the sun shines good or better today because it smiles, or the clouds are crying, the skies are crying. It means it rains, but we are describing the action, the event, through giving an inanimate object like clouds the ability of a human, which is crying. Okay? Okay, so that's personification, giving things that are not human abilities. And second to the last, we have simile. Well, it's a stated comparison. Like metaphor, they are a comparison of two things, but here it's a comparison using like or as. So as long as you see the words as and like, that's already a simile. Like for example, Roberto was white as a sheet of paper. So Roberto is compared to a sheet of paper when it comes to his color, meaning the skin of Roberto after he walked out of the horror movie, is as white as a sheet of paper. Okay, like she is as beautiful as the stars. Like boys, the things that you say to the girls you're courting, you are as beautiful as the moon. Uh, You like you're like the rose. Things like that, using as and like simile. And I believe the last one we have synecdoche. So synecdoche is a figure of speech which is a part is used to represent the whole. So it's like metonymy, but in metonymy what we are representing is an idea that is closely associated with the word that we have used, like hand instead of help. In synecdoche, we are using the part of a whole to represent it. Like, for example, Tina is learning her ABCs in preschool. So, ABC here is representing the whole alphabet. Okay? So, it's synecdoche because the part is representing a whole. For example, another example, Lara and Robert are living in the same roof, meaning they are living in the same house. So instead of directly saying house, the whole part or the whole object house, we just say a part, a roof, diba? Lara and Robert are living in the same roof, under the same roof. So we are using the part to represent the whole. Get that? Alright. I hope that you get that. Okay, and that would be all for our discussion. And I hope that you would understand this. And if we'll be permitted to have our face-to-face class the next day, I believe we could review this. Alright, but for now, that will be all for imagery, diction, and figurative language. Thank you, and may you have a good day today. Stay safe, everyone. And yes, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you. Bye.